Hello, everyone. How's everyone going? Good. Well, it's my privilege today to speak to you on Palm Sunday. And our message today that we've already seen is looking at our King has come. And so, as we are thinking about kings, I wanted to do a little activity to get us thinking about it. We're going to do a little bit of questions from the Bible: king, fact, or fiction. So, the question's going to come up, and you might want to just talk to the person next to you or decide whether you think that that is a true or false statement. So, the first one is King Solomon ordered the creation of 300 full-body golden shields worth more than $20 million. Fact or fiction? Fact or fiction? That $20 million is like in today's money, not what... Like, I don't even know what type of money they used back then. So, fact or fiction? Fact. It is in fact true. And you can find it in 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 16. True. All right, second one, fact or fiction? King Ahab once had his neighbour killed so that he could take his land to plant his own vegetable garden. Fact or fiction? It's a trick question. Trick question. It was. It's true, but actually Ahab was not the one that killed Naboth. Yes, Ahab just whinged about it, and then his wife orchestrated the killing of Naboth. Yes, there you go. 1 Kings 21. Question number 3. Queen Athaliah is the only ruling female monarch. She installed herself on the throne after killing all possible male heirs. Male heirs being her children and her grandchildren. Did she kill them? Did she make herself queen? Fact or fiction? Fact. 2 Kings 11. I don't even have to make up things for this. There are some crazy things that happened in the Old Testament. All right. Next question. King Solomon became so beloved by his people and the surrounding peoples that he was the first king to commission rock carvings of his face to be displayed on street corners. Fact or fiction? Fiction. That's true. I made that one up. That one's not true. And the last one, number 5. King Zimri was the shortest reigning king. He reigned only 7 days when he died by a palace fire that he started himself. Fact or fiction? Fact. 1 Kings 16. You can find that story. Yes. Interesting story. Yep. So Israel, we can see from these questions, and certainly if you read more of the Old Testament, that Israel really did have a pretty checkered past with their kings. Some good, some bad, but at some point along, all of them stuffed up. All of them had a problem following God, and ultimately Israel was exiled, and they were never able to truly get back to being a nation under the rule of an Israelite king again. And this is where we come to. Enter Jesus. And that brings us to today's passage in Matthew 21. And so I'm just going to read the passage that we're focusing on today. So, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jerusalem sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, and her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. "Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went on ahead of them and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest!" When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." And so as we have a look at this passage today, I want us to think about three questions that come from the passage. Who is Jesus? What was his purpose? And what was the response to Jesus? So firstly, let's look at who is Jesus? What do we learn about him from the passage? So in the passage, Jesus is called the Son of David. And this is a very significant thing for us to understand about Jesus, because the Son of David was a term that was used, was very familiar to the Israelites, because it was the term that was applied to the king that they were waiting for. They were waiting for a king that had been predicted for centuries, waiting for the promised king to come, the Son of David, the king who would come and claim ultimate victory, the final king, the last king of Israel. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, God says to David that he promises that he will raise up offspring from David's line and his throne will be established forever. And that is the weight of that name. That is why it's so important that we understand Son of David, huge name, huge call. Some important context to this passage just previously in chapter 20. It is the first time that Jesus even allowed himself to be called by that name. Jesus has been walking around, doing miracles, teaching, preaching, appearing in temples and synagogues, but had not allowed himself up until this point to be called that name, and he'd never responded to it. But in chapter 20, just before this, he's coming out of Jericho, and there's two blind men sitting on the side of the road. And they call out to him, they say, "Son of David, have mercy on us." And he responds. He accepts the name, he has compassion on them, and he heals them. And the reason that he does this, and the reason that it took so long for Jesus to accept that name, was because he understands the weight of that name. It's why he didn't use it before now, because he understood what would happen when he owned it. He was coming out publicly saying, "I am the rightful king. I'm the promised one." And I'm confronting everyone everywhere saying, "I'm the Messiah. I'm the king who has come to save all people. The king, the promised king by God himself, who would rule and reign the whole world." To admit to being the Son of David was to claim the throne and the crown. And Jesus is the king. And here he is, claiming that title, riding into Jerusalem the same way that so many of the kings had done before him. But they were riding in from victory in war. And Jesus was receiving the same welcome, a victor's welcome. That was the palm branches, the coats. Kings that had gone to battle to fight foreign nations and to protect Israel, this is how they came into Jerusalem. This is the fanfare that they received. And this was the same path that King David himself came into Jerusalem in after he had defeated his son Absalom, who tried to take the throne from him. Same path. And people were responding to Jesus like he was a victorious king. People were taking their coats off their back, which, I have a lot of coats, and you might have a lot of coats, but back in those days, people had like one coat, and it was like their thing that kept them warm. For them to take it off and put it on the ground and let it be rode on by a donkey, that was big. That was sacrificial for those people. And they were laying down their coats. They were waving palm branches as he rode into Jerusalem. And they were calling out and they were shouting, "The king has come. The king has come." And so there were huge expectations on Jesus. And we could see it a little bit in the video too. There were expectations on what Jesus was going to come and what it would look like when he came. What was he going to do? How was he going to be this mighty, victorious king? And they were expecting this glorious king to lead Israel, to take back Jerusalem and be the king in the way that they knew that kings were in the Old Testament. But there are two important key things in this passage that we need to notice, and that we need to notice how Jesus is different from any king that came before him. And the first thing was that Jesus was completely in control. He knew the plan and the purpose, and he arranged his own entry into Jerusalem, didn't he? He sent his disciples to the exact place to get the donkey from Bethany. From Bethany, the place where the people knew and loved him well, because that's where Lazarus was from. He'd spent a lot of time there, and that's where he had raised Lazarus from the dead. And when he went there to get the donkey, he also got the crowd. If you notice in the passage, the crowd comes before and after Jesus. The crowd is not people from Jerusalem. The crowd is the people from Bethany and the people that were coming with Jesus up into Jerusalem. The people that knew and loved Jesus. And these were the people that were going before and after him, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven. Jesus organized the crowd. The crowd of people that was praising Jesus wasn't from Jerusalem. Jesus organized the donkey. He organized the crowd because he was coming to confront Jerusalem. He was coming to confront the leaders, and he was coming to say, I am king. And the second thing to take notice of, actually, I'm just going to take a little drink. Sorry. The second thing to take notice of, which I think is the thing that sticks out most in the passage, is the donkey. His choice of steed, a donkey. And this makes sense in context. There are two important prophecies or times in the Old Testament where God tells people things that are going to happen in the future. And the first one that refers to the donkey is in Genesis 49. And it's when Jacob is blessing his sons, or Israel is blessing the 12 tribes, and the blessing that is given to Judah. And it says, the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his feet, until he whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. He will tether his donkey to a vine, his colt to the choicest branch. He will wash his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. And this is speaking about Jesus, and it's predicting the king that will come, a king that will come forever, a king that will be the king of everyone, that all people will bow down to him, and he will put everything right again. And that's predicted all the way back in Genesis. And then the second prophecy, which is echoed in the Matthew prophecy, it comes from Zechariah chapter 9, and it says, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem, see your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And again, talking about a righteous and victorious king. And Matthew echoes this in our passage today, Matthew 21, where he says, see, your king comes to you. But it's changed, the language has changed a little bit. It says gentle and riding on a donkey. Key word to notice, gentle. No king or general rides into battle gentle and on a donkey. They're on a war horse with armor. A king that is riding into battle on a donkey would be better walking into battle on foot. Because a king riding into battle on a donkey is going to get killed. So why would Jesus do that? Because this is God's plan from the beginning. And it was completely unexpected. What was going to happen, what Jesus was going to do, was completely unexpected. And we saw it in the video. People were expecting a king to come in and lead them to victory through battle. But Jesus doesn't. He rides in gentle on a donkey, riding into war, but to be killed. Because his purpose was to bring salvation. And this was part of God's plan from the beginning. That Jesus, gentle as a servant, as a sacrificial lamb, came to lay down his life. And how do people respond to him? Jesus comes into Jerusalem humble and gentle on a donkey, but he's not modest, he's bold. He confronts, because he doesn't just slip into Jerusalem. He comes in fanfare. He comes in a celebration of people. He comes in to confront the people and say, I am king. And the message that he gives to people is simple. Crown me or kill me. I'm your king or I'm nobody. I want all of you or none of you. I'm your everything or I'm nothing to you. Crown me or kill me. And what did the people in Jerusalem do? Killed him. In the passage that immediately follows the triumphal entry, Jesus goes to the temple. And this is where he cleanses the temple. He turns over tables and he drives people out, because the people in the temple were using the sacrificial system to cheat other people out of their money. People would come to Jerusalem, they would bring their animals to sacrifice, they would take them to the temple, and the temple officials would look over them and say, oh, actually, sorry, this isn't good enough. We're going to have to take that from you. You're going to have to go up to that table over there and you're going to have to buy one of our approved sacrificial animals. And so people would go and they would buy something else, and then they would take the animals that they'd said these aren't good enough, and when those people were gone, they'd go and put them on the other table. And Jesus came and he said, you are cheating people out of their money. You are using a system that God put in place to sacrifice, a system I put in place to have a relationship with me, and you are using it for personal gain. People were using God, and people were putting themselves in the place of God. And this is sin, isn't it? And this is all of us. We all put ourselves in God's place in our lives. We who are meant to be God's servants, we who are meant to allow him to use us as we follow him with our lives, but instead we wear the crown. We make choices and decisions every day that are about us. We choose our own comfort, our own desires, ambitions, materialisms, addictions, and we want to live our way. And we want to do what we can to achieve the things that we want in our lives. In Mark 1, it tells a story of Jesus earlier on in his ministry. And he goes to one of his disciples' house, Simon. His mother-in-law is sick, and Jesus goes and heals Simon's mother-in-law. And by that afternoon, everybody who has a demon-possessed or sick person is at the door. In fact, the passage says in Mark 1 that the whole city was gathered together at the door. And then Jesus went on to heal many people. But the thing that he does next, I find so interesting. The next morning, he gets up very early to pray. He slips out and nobody knows where he goes. And when finally the disciples find him, they say, everybody is looking for you. There are more people to heal. They have brought everyone. And Jesus says, let us go out to the next town, that I might preach there also, for that is why I came out. For that is why I came out, to preach the message of salvation from sins, to preach about repentance, to remind people that Jesus is the King and he belongs on the throne in our lives. There are lots of things that Jesus does in his ministry. He heals a lot of people, but that is not why he came. He came to preach the message of salvation. He did not come as a wish genie to grant our desires, to make our lives to be the way that we want them to be. He didn't come to fulfill our expectations for our lives or to give us what we want. He moved on from people like that. He moved on to the next village because he moved on to preach the gospel. And this gospel, the gospel that says that we will all die, that is a fact. We will all die. And when we die, we will be held account for the choices and the decisions that we make in our lives. We will be judged. We will face our Creator God. And we will have to answer for the times in our lives that we chose to live our way instead of God's way. For all the greedy, mean, foolish, selfish things that we've done. And because of these choices that we make every day, we deserve to be separated from God and his goodness and love eternally. We deserve that eternal separation because we make ourselves the king of our lives. Enter Jesus, the gentle and humble king who rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. He wore a crown of thorns and was put to death on a cross between two criminals. And in doing so, our gentle and humble king put himself in the place of a servant. He put himself in our place. The King of heaven and earth, gentle and humble, died for our salvation. He separated himself from God so that we would never have to feel that separation. And as an Easter spoiler, we know he came back to life. He came back from death, defeating the power of sin, defeating the power of death, so that we can look forward to an eternal future in heaven with God, where we will be made perfect and new. Everything will be perfect and new. And we can look forward to that. And I think it's important that we see that Jesus wants that for us. And while he wants our lives now to be good, he loves us, he wants good things for us, the best thing that he offers us is our eternal future where everything will be made new. So what do we need to do? How do we respond to this? Crown him. We need to crown him as the king of our lives. We need to take the crown off our own head and we need to surrender it to Jesus. And crowning Jesus means serving him with everything that we have, everything that we are. Crowning him means that we are committing ourselves to putting the message of the gospel above everything else. That is our purpose in life, to make Jesus known. And we do this through the words that we speak and the way that we live. We take every opportunity that we have to tell people the gospel, to speak the gospel and about Jesus into people's lives. But we also do it through the way that we live, through the way that we love. And we love people. We go above and beyond. We love people in the ways that other people do not love. We show grace. We show generosity to all people. We forgive. And we love the people that hate us. And I'm proud to be part of a church that I think does this well. But we can always do better. There are more people that need to know about Jesus. And crowning Jesus also means giving up the things that are getting in the way of Jesus being the king of our lives. And so that means asking ourselves some tough questions. Do I love my money, my house, my things more than I love Jesus? Do I love my comfort and my security and my reputation more than I love Jesus? Do I love someone else more than Jesus? Do I love my job and my ambition more than Jesus? Do I love the gratification of my desires more than I love Jesus? And what is it for you? Because for some of us, it could be the same things. For some of us, it could be different things. And for some of us, we have never made Jesus our King in the first place. And for some of us, things have taken the place of Jesus as the King of our lives. So I'm going to talk to God and I'm going to ask him to help us make Jesus our King and to help him keep Jesus as our King. So let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you that you died for me in my place. Sorry for all the times that I made myself king. Sorry for all the times I was selfish, greedy, and mean. I want you to be my king. I want to live for you. Help me to take every opportunity to share the gospel with the people in my life through my words and actions. And show me the things in my life I follow instead of you. Give me your strength and resolve to remove them and to follow you wholeheartedly. Amen.